Welcome to the Female Founder Unplugged podcast, a show for women entrepreneurs who want to build, grow, and lead successful businesses and high-performing teams. I'm your host, Lindsay White, leadership coach and people strategy expert, here to bring you unplugged conversations with a variety of amazing guests who share expert advice and real actionable people strategies for your growing business. Ready to get unplugged? Let's jump in. Welcome to another episode of Female Founder Unplugged. I have my friend Lisa here today, and she is a remarkable female founder. She is the founder and has served as the president of Bottom Line for over a decade and has built a really incredible international organization that's focused on business strategy and really driving those tangible results. She's also a speaker. We were just talking about how we love to be facilitators. She's a consultant. She loves to share her expertise on those effective business strategies, brand positioning, inspiring audience to really implement those actionable insights. And she's got so much to offer us. So Lisa, thank you for being a part of the conversation on the Female Founder Unplugged podcast. I'm really glad to have you here.
Oh, I really appreciate you having me. I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure. So, bottom line, founder and president for over a decade. Tell us about your journey to becoming a female founder. How did you get here?
Yeah, happy to share. I think like any entrepreneur, we looked at a problem and said, "Ha, I can do that better." And so we went out and tried to do that. I started my career working for an agency that did marketing for IT and MSP firms. I started as a copywriter there, and by the time I left, I was running their Western Canadian division. But one of the things that I really struggled with there was that they did not use research to inform their strategy. I also struggled with coming to work every day and living in this world of conflicts of interest because we only represented one market vertical or one type of client. And that was pretty tough. And so when I left, I said, okay, there's got to be a better way. There needs to be, research that drives strategy. I wanted to diversify working with different types of clients as well. And so when I first started Bottom Line, it was just me. And then about a month in, two of my direct reports from the previous agency came to me and said, "Hey, can we have a job?" And like a crazy person who just started a new company, I said, "Sure, why not?" And so, the rest is kind of history. It grew organically from there. And we are about 13 and a half years in now.
That's amazing. I love that. I mean, again, always this idea that you see a problem and you're like, wait a minute, I have a better solution, right? I can do that. And
Well,
yeah, and I think I think that's the impetus for a lot of great female founded organizations, right?
for sure,
It doesn't have to be done that way because that's the way it's always been done. I can do it different.
totally. I think that's the beauty of business and the freedom is you get to choose and you get to decide. And I think, like many other female entrepreneurs, I know the best businesses come from, hey, I'm not going to follow the status quo. Instead, I'm going to forge my own path and do it my own way. And I've watched some pretty remarkable people do that.
Yeah, I think that that's incredible. Well, and we talked about you and I do a number of different things. We were talking before we hit record that we both really love facilitating and teaching people, and helping them integrate information, right? That actually is a great way to share all our knowledge and experience, some of the ups and downs that we've encountered.
Totally. Well, and it's super interesting when you talk about the facilitation and the workshops piece that we were discussing before we got on. And as I mentioned, I just finished teaching a series of workshops in the US. And before I went down, actually, I revised some of my materials based on some of my learnings from when I was at Harvard earlier this year. They use case method, and I jokingly said if I had done my undergrad this way, I probably would have gotten multiple degrees because it felt like that debate and that discussion, it really cemented the learning and it was actually fun. I really, really enjoyed it. And so I changed a piece of my workshop to be that same style. I gave them actual case studies to read over in groups and then we discussed it. And the feedback has been really strong. But to your point about loving facilitation, I think it's like the one part of my job that really does light me up, and I love, love, love doing it.
Yeah, I think there's something really special about that, and how we can use our hard-earned knowledge to reach other people and support them in their process. And I always think about doing it in an altruistic way, right? Like whether they decide that there's something in it for them and they want to become a client, or they want to learn more and do their own research, or how do they apply it when they get back to their own business. I think there's just a lot of power in sharing the conversation, and yeah, like just bringing the knowledge to new people.
For sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I also think as we grow older, it is our
Yeah.
duty to really help up and coming new leaders. And I
Yeah.
think we have to make an intentional effort to support people that are growing in their careers, because I think back to when I was that age, if I didn't have that, how hard it would have been. If I didn't have people to mentor me and to share,
Yeah.
how they've done things, it would have been hard. And so I think that give back piece is important.
Yeah, it is. I think you're right. And it's certainly the types of spaces and communities that I know I want to be involved in, is when that reciprocity, right? Like I want to do this because there's something in it for both of us, right? The opportunity for growth or more work or collaborations or even inspiration. Absolutely. Um, the other thing, because I didn't, I mean, Lisa's got quite the bio. She's quite the female founder. But one of the things that I love about your approach is that you really bring a lot of research and data to the business strategies and the approaches that you take, not only like in your own business, but with your clients in particular. Because I think we get caught up in this sort of bro or bra marketing space that, I made $1 million overnight. So just take my 7 steps and look at what you'll be able, right? Like I really dislike that in a very passionate way. So how do you bring that research and data into that strategic approach? Because I'm curious about that.
I love what you've said, Lindsay, around. I too have a high dislike for that. I don't think that cookie cutter cuts the mustard. I really think that each business needs to be looked at individually and figure out what works for them. And that does come back to the research piece and do your homework first. So when I start, whether it's in a consulting arrangement or whether it's a client at bottom line, it starts with just basic discovery. You need to understand who they are as a business, as a brand. What's the playing field that they're in? What's happening in the industry? Who are the key players? So who are the competitors? Who are their ideal customers or clients? And until you really understand those pieces, it's pretty hard to come up with a strategy that's going to work. And of course, we do all of your, typical qualitative, quantitative, empirical research, but I think people make it harder than it needs to be. And a lot of people look at research as, oh, it's only for the big boys, the big companies, and it's not. I think as a small business, even really just taking that time to have a conversation with a customer, understand, why did you buy from me? What other competitors did you consider before you chose our
Yeah.
business? What do you like about working with us? What do you dislike? That is gold. If you can use those insights to drive your strategy, we're going to be so much further ahead than your competitors in your space. And again, it doesn't have to be, a series of focus groups to get there. It can be just simple customer interviews.
It's so funny you say that because I was talking with my husband just the other day. We are contemplating getting a new vehicle, and we're talking about getting a pickup truck. And it's so funny because we were talking about a particular brand that I shall not name. And he was saying, my husband's a researcher, right? He'll go down the rabbit hole. And he's like, this particular brand of truck had no plugins in the back, no air vents in the back, no, right? Like it really was get in the back and put your seatbelt on. And that was, and in, our today's modern world, we're all connected to our devices. We need plugins, we need jacks, we need lights. We certainly need air conditioning or heating vents. And I said to him, it continues to astound me with all the data that's available today that even one of the largest car companies in the world, a brand that I would say the name and everyone would recognize, actually had no clue that people would want a plug-in for their cell phone in the back of the pickup truck, right? Like it's astonishing.
It is astounding. And the number of companies that I see that overlook those key insights and for no good reason other than complacency.
Yeah, yeah.
It, it's almost frustrating to me because I think that again, back to it doesn't have to be hard. Just put your mindset or put yourself in the customer's shoes for a second and think about, well, what would they actually want or need? And then here's a concept, ask them.
Yeah. Yeah, just take a couple people for coffee.
Yeah.
Take it offline if you can. I mean, that's not always possible, but like, yeah, ask good questions and use your ears and your mouth in the proportion they exist on your face. It's surprising what people will do when you just shut up and listen. Um, no, I do. I think you're right. So it's clearly just not paying attention and not asking questions.
Well, and I think too, a lot of it is that leaders are busy,
Yeah.
and so and they're relying on other people to give them the information they need to make decisions. But sometimes understanding what the right information is that they need and then what to do with it is the harder problem.
Mhm.
So I think, you're setting yourself up for failure if you're not asking the tough questions of the people that are giving you that information. And then also validating, did that come straight from, the customer's mouth, or is this an assumption that middle management made up?
Mhm.
Because they don't want to go have that conversation with the front line. It's usually that, I hate to say. And so, it's a really simple thing. I teach a lot of times where it's build customer feedback loops, build a regular cadence that you're going to gather that information, have a system that you use so that it's not just something that happens, one time and then it gets ignored for 2 years and you go back to the well then after it's too late. It really needs to be something that's done on a regular basis and done intentionally.
Yeah, you know what? And I think that's the key word. It's got to be done with intention. Whether you are simply starting out, I mean, I certainly remember doing a lot of research, and investigation. I mean, hello, Google. Right? Like start with what you know, start with the people you know, punch in some questions, see what comes up, follow that line. And yeah, it's going to get more robust, perhaps as you get larger and your business becomes more sophisticated and more complicated.
Sure.
But yeah, I think it can be. We do get further and further away from direct interaction with our client as our business grows.
Of course, it's only natural.
It's only natural. Well, and that's what I wanted to ask you about because I mean, you've grown a beautiful business. And I mean, you talked about how you were away last week teaching and facilitating some workshops, and you do those for a variety of organizations. How do you keep in touch as your team grows, as the organization, continues to build? How do you keep in touch not only with your team, but also with your clients as that most senior leader in your organization?
Well, I appreciate the kind words. In terms of your question, though, a couple things. So within our company, each manager is required to have a one-to-one with each of their direct reports every week. I'm no different. I have a one-to-one with the folks that report to me every week. And then in terms of our customer base, we run like a simple NPS survey once a quarter just to understand how are we doing, where can we be better. And then there's also KPIs that are built into our account management team's scorecard, if you will, where they're required to ask for feedback. Once a quarter, go to a client meeting with a place that they can add value for that customer that's outside of their regular contract. And it might be something as simple as an observation about their business, a learning, a tip, whatever that looks like.
Mm.
But we have, regular communication and regular touch points, I think is the message I want to get across here.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And um it's funny when I talk with business owners and they're like, "Well, we're really struggling with some communication and I'm having trouble getting people to be accountable, take ownership." And I'm like, "Do you meet with them regularly?" "Well, yeah, I talk to them every day." "No, do you meet with them regularly?" "Oh, you mean like a separate meeting?" "Yeah."
Mhm.
Yes. That
A
so
separate meeting.
it's interesting how many organizations feel like that's not part of something they do.
Yeah. Yeah. It's surprising. And I think the other thing is the structure around those conversations. So not only are you having that intentional meeting, but what's getting talked about during that meeting. So
Yeah.
we do an annual performance review, but then, and there's a weekly one-to-one check-in of, how are you doing? Where can I, better support you? What roadblocks do you have that I can help remove? Those
Yes.
type of weekly conversation. But then on a quarterly basis, we're also going through what's their annual KPIs and what's the progress towards those goals. And again, as your leader, what roadblocks can I help remove for you so you can get to that KPI? But there has to be some structure and some format around that. And it can't just be like, yeah, I had a one-to-one meeting and we talked. We talked about what? Like that's also not a productive meeting in my mind.
Yeah. It's got to be somewhere in the middle, right? Like just scheduling an hour to shoot the shit, like that's not going to cut it. But I also think I talk with business leaders that it's like a to-do list. They spend the hour running down the laundry list. Like basically, are you done yet? Are you done yet? Is this done? Where's this at? That's not actually valuable either.
Absolutely.
There's a sweet spot in the middle because there's got to be some connection. How are you?
Yes.
Right? What are you doing? What are you struggling with? And then, yes, let's get real strategic about where are the places that you need. If you're doing okay, you probably don't need to hear about it. Where are you struggling? What are the roadblocks? How can I support or enable? And also, what do I need to do better? Right? Like, give me feedback.
1,000%.
Yeah. I love it. You and I are completely aligned on this. Again, it's still astonishing to me that so many people just don't recognize how much more valuable these conversations can be with just tweaks to the way we do them.
Well, and I think honestly, this comes back to leadership skills because I think that so many times somebody with we'll call it a lower leadership skill, thinks it's faster to just tell someone how to do it, or thinks it's faster to just check the boxes, but it's short-sighted because you're not, I call it teach a person to fish, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
you're not spending that time and investing in that other person to build the rapport, understand what's going on in their life, and then B, how can I build those skills so that they can often stand on their own 2 feet and
Yeah.
I'm not going to step in and prop them up all the time. But I see that tons with up and coming leaders where it's easier to just do it myself than to teach the other person those skills.
I hear that all the time. I hear that all the time, especially from business owners. Maybe they have 4 or 5 staff already and they're poised for growth, right? Like their business is ready to take off and they hesitate because, well, how am I going to do it? Like, nobody here takes ownership. I'm going to have to do it all. I can't. And they leave money on the table. Well, because you should be growing your team to be leaders themselves. That's the whole idea, right? And so it actually it's sad when I see that because you shouldn't have to do it all. That's actually the opposite of what you're trying to create.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
So I mean, clearly you've created a really great system. I love it. And I think these quarterly check-ins, there's nothing worse than getting to like a year-end performance review. I can't remember what I had for breakfast yesterday, let alone what I did what I did well or what I didn't do well 11 months ago. Like, forget that. Checking in on a 3-month period, I stand a chance of remembering. So I love that a lot. I think that makes a lot of sense. But like, what advice would you give to business owners that are saying, well, my team isn't accountable? How did you build that in your team?
Oh, well, I wish I could just wave a magic wand and say,
Well,
yeah.
100%, right?
But I think a couple things. One is definitely including your team in the planning and the goal setting of the company.
Yeah,
Getting
great
everybody
idea.
to give input and not something that leadership team decides and then just imparts to everybody else. This is what we're doing this year. So we do at the end of our fiscal year ends April 30th. So we'll have a discussion about, okay, what do we want to actually achieve as a team and as a company in the next
Yeah,
year? Once we have all agreed upon those goals, then we go back and look at, KPIs and measurement around it. So that's been a big one. The other thing that I think, is a constant around building accountability is we call it kind is clear at bottom
yeah,
line. Giving clear but kind feedback when someone misses the mark, not being afraid, that you're going to hurt someone's feelings, because again, being clear is kind. That's been a real big one. And I think, do we always get it right? No, but I think it has really fostered a culture of accountability because, people inherently want to do good. They want to be
yeah.
jobs. For the most part, anyways, there's always one in every bunch, but for the most part, people care. And I think if you give them that space to say, hey, you missed the mark here, this is actually what I was hoping for and looking for. Next time, if I could ask you to do X, they're like, yeah, absolutely. And then most of the time, it doesn't happen again.
Mhm. Yeah. I think that's beautiful. I use that clear as kind phrase as well, which I think has, for three little words, it has a whole lot of meaning.
Yeah,
But the idea that I give clear, concise, and articulate instructions and create understanding. And that in doing that, I am being kind to that person because I am offering them exactly what they need to meet expectations, to create accountability. Like, and then on the other side, when there is something that doesn't go right, that I give them the clear feedback. I am articulate about what has not gone the way we wanted it to. And we co create solutions to your point so it never happens again. But when I do that, I'm actually being kind to them because I'm giving them the information they need.
totally. Instead of sugarcoating it, saying, oh, it's okay. Here, let me help out, and then just step in and do it. I see that constantly. It drives me insane in the business world.
100%. Or on the other side, ignoring it until it becomes absolutely like unbearable. And then it becomes hyper emotional.
Mhm.
We freak out and overreact. And that's when things go brutally wrong. Um, and neither of those two things, either stepping in and doing it ourselves or losing our tempers, actually create what we want, which is a workplace where people do great work. Right? I mean, that's why we hire people in the first place. We need their help and we want them to deliver.
Totally. Totally. Point
I
blank.
I got to tell you, I get asked, I have probably delivered half a dozen times this year workshops on courageous conversations and how to have them. And it is something that I know so many people struggle with because you don't want to hurt people's feelings.
It's true, but I think our operations manager is his name is Juan, and he's wonderful at this. He has really taught me you need to look at feedback as a gift to that other person.
Ah,
It's not about you, and you're actually being selfish by not giving that gift to the other person.
100%. I love that.
I'm like, yeah, you're absolutely right. Because I'll be honest, like in my younger years, I was that person. I was terrified to
Yeah.
hurt someone's feelings, or what if they don't like me, and I'm now at this place where I've really embraced I am doing that other person a disservice by not stepping up and saying something.
Yeah, you know what? That's a great way to look at it, is that I'm not doing my job. I'm not leading my best.
Yeah,
If I am not giving people feedback in a way that is meaningful and also direct, but done with great kindness and love.
that's right.
Because you can be direct with people and still be very kind.
Of course. Of
Yeah.
course. So long as
Yeah.
that other person knows that you care about them,
Yes.
established that. I think it has to come from a place of trust first. But
Hmm.
once they know that you truly do care about them as a human, and that you're doing, doing this because you care about them, it shifts the whole conversation.
Yeah. No, I think you really brought up something very important, and that is that it has to be deeply rooted in trust. We have to trust, if we do not have trust in our teams, then we can't communicate effectively. We can't share feedback honestly. We can't leverage each other's brilliance in like, right? We don't feel like we can contribute our new or interesting or innovative idea, right? Like if we don't have trust, then we can't do these things in a really meaningful way.
Totally. I can't, it's one of those things where once you see it, you can't unsee it.
That's actually a great way to think about it, because it's the truth. Like yeah, you can't walk away from it.
No.
No. Um, what are the kinds of things that you do to grow that trust in your team? Because it sounds like you do a pretty fantastic job of that.
Well, we try.
Right?
A couple things. So we do at least once, if not twice a month. Our all hands meetings are on Friday mornings. These two meetings a month, we will do some form of a team building activity.
Mhm.
And we try to make them fun, lighthearted, but it's all in the spirit of getting to know each other better on a much more human level and to build connection. So, one of the most recent ones we've done, and I'm sure people have heard this 1,000 times, is we broke into small groups. Everybody was given a list of, I think it was 15 or 20 items. And your scenario was that you were capsized in the middle of the ocean from a plane crash. And as a group, you had to decide which 10 items and in what order of priority you were going to select off that list to survive. And then we came back to the larger group and discussed, here's why we chose this versus this. And some of it was hilarious, I will say that. And it was fun, but it built, great problem solving skills. And it also helped you get to know other people on your team that you might not work with on a daily basis. So that's just a small example of like team building stuff we do. Once a quarter, we also do our professional development sessions. So we'll either bring in someone to teach a new skill, or we'll host a more formal workshop. So ones we've done in the past, we had like Caroline Brookfield come in and teach a creativity workshop.
Well, yeah, she's awesome. Yeah.
She is awesome, and we
Yeah.
had so much fun.
Yeah.
And so we do that once a quarter, and then we have. It sounds funny. We have a Slack channel called A Day in a Life at BL, and people chime in, photos from their weekend, things that they're working on, personal projects, like you name it,
Yeah.
stuff. For instance, my most recent trip to Phoenix, I posted a video where I took my first autonomous car, which I was terrified. And the team teased me because I was terrified, so I
Ah,
had to do it. And so I took a video of going in this self-driving car and posted it for them, and then we had a big discussion about it. But those are just a couple of ways that we kind of foster connection.
yeah. And I think, I mean, I work with people that have teams from 5 to 50 and beyond. And the idea that you have a place where you can just share and interact in a personal way, and be connected, because we're more than just the person that spends 8 hours working on the projects. We're
Totally.
whole people. And we spend a lot of time with these people that we work with, whether we work remotely or in person, or maybe a bit of both. We spend a lot of time with these people. And so, yes, of course, getting to know each other creates trust. It just makes sense,
For sure.
right?
For sure.
and to be able to work differently and share differently. And I love a good icebreaker. I know that some people are like they're groaning and rolling their eyes as they're listening, but I think when it's really well done, there's a great opportunity to share and learn something different about, like, one of my favorites is two truths and a lie. So if you're listening, you've never done this before, Lisa's laughing. Everybody goes around, you have to pick two things that are true about you and one thing that's a lie. And your team has to then guess what is the lie. And if they guess right, you tell them what the lie is. If they guess wrong, then you get to unravel and it just is an opportunity for people to laugh and joke and figure out something new. And you can customize these things. There's a ton of them available, but figuring out what people do and don't do is always a ton of fun.
It's so true. Why I was laughing when you said two truths and a lie. I got to tell this story. So we did this activity as a team, and our digital lead, a data analyst, he had, I can't remember what his two truths were, but or his lie was, but his one truth was that he almost became a priest. But we all guessed that that was a lie. It was totally true.
And that would never have come out in the course of the work.
No.
It's funny. My husband's like that. He actually, he was in the Canadian Navy, and when he was finished his last posting, he actually ran like the ice rink on the base and was a Zamboni driver. And
Oh,
so he
wow.
often uses that he used to drive a Zamboni, and everybody's like, "Oh, that's totally a lie." He's like, "No, it's actually true." And then everybody kind of laughs, and they're like, "How the hell did you start driving?" Well, like, what are you talking about? You used to, and so you get to tell the story, right? And in that place is connection. And
Totally.
connection is what encourages us we see each other as real whole people, not just project managers or team leaders or data analysts. We see each other as real whole individuals. And I've always said it's harder to yell at someone you think is a friend, right? Like if right? If you're working with someone and you just think they're another, cog in the wheel, it's easy to get angry and frustrated and ticked off with them. But if you
Yeah.
see them as a friend, it's a lot harder to get into that negative emotional space. You have a lot more empathy and understanding. That's what we need in our workplaces.
Yes.
Yeah, I
So,
love I love that a lot. I want to ask you a personal question. Are you okay with it?
oh, of course.
What are you working on as a leader? What's your leading edge?
Okay, good question. Hmm. A few things. I actually, on a continual basis, work on that blind spot around clear as kind. I
Okay.
think I will always, forever and a
100%.
day, will
Yeah.
struggle with that, and so I have to remind myself, usually daily, because it doesn't come naturally to me. The other thing, though, that I'm working on is trying to empower my leadership team more and not stepping in and really allowing them that space to fail.
Mm,
I know that one of my blind spots is to be a bit of a perfectionist. And
mm,
so if something isn't, perfectly going the way I would have done it, there are times where I won't step in and do it for them, but I might step in and meddle a little bit and say, hey, I see this is maybe kind of going off the rails. And they're like, whoa, we got this handled. Like, just let us do this. And so I've actually made some agreements with my management team around reminding me when I am hitting an edge, we call it, and when I need to step back and kind of get out of their way and let them do it. And so that's been something that hasn't been easy, but I think the main thing was having that conversation to identify, hey, this is one of my blind spots. I am aware of it, and I want you to remind me when I'm doing this. And you've got my word that when you remind me, I'm not going to get upset. Instead, I'm going to back off
right.
and let you do your job. Is it always perfect? No, but is it getting better? Yeah, like absolutely. And last week was a really great test. I was pretty much offline because I was super busy last week, outside of one text message that I got from Juan saying, stop being a coward and try the autonomous car.
Ah, at least he called you coward and not a baby.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, honestly, like I was totally hands off last week. I came back to no fires at all. It was a dream, and I'm really grateful for that. So something I'm working towards is really having the business operate without me, and we got a ways to go before we get there entirely. But yeah, it was a really good test.
So, okay, thank you for letting me put you on the spot like that. And I want to acknowledge that it's not always easy to admit because that, I hand up, I'm a perfectionist. I belong to the club. And my, programming, my standard operating procedure is to go and get in the mix. I'm going to mix in. I'm going to mix in. And actually, as as the most senior leader in your business, that in fact that is the opposite of what you should do. But like just to recognize that that's my default operating system is to mix in. I mean, that in itself, I think, deserves acknowledgement and celebration. And then that you've made those agreements. You clearly have such great trust with your team that they're like, when I feel like you're interfering, I'm going to gently like, here's the safe word. I'm going to gently remind you
Oh,
that you
totally.
promised me that you wouldn't mix in. I love it.
Well, there's a bit of a joke. Probably 4 years ago, our previous operations manager once said to me, and it still stuck to me to this day, Lisa, we're handling it like big kids. We got this. So I still giggle every time. Okay, big kids, go do your job.
Hey, listen, she's got a point. I mean, we hire really smart people, and then what do? Things start to go a little bit off the rails, and we actually get in their way. Let the smart people do the thing you hired them to do,
For sure. And
right?
as leaders, though, especially like perfectionist control freak,
Yeah.
here, putting my hand up,
Yeah.
is you have to build yourself boundaries and you have to build yourself, some structure around that because it can feel really out of control if you see it going off the rails and you've told yourself, well, don't get in their way. So I think that there has to be a line of like, when is it that I step in and you
Yes.
have an agreement with that person that if I see it getting to this point, please know I'm going to override your decision and I'm going to step in and I
Yes.
need you to be okay with that. But anything up till that point, I'm button out, and you can remind me that I need to butt out.
Yes. I really appreciate that because, again, back to your clear is kind. I got to tell you, I think as leaders, we don't always do the best job setting the expectation and giving clear instructions. So I think that the problem actually originates with us, not necessarily always our employees. And when I go into an organization and the boss is saying to me, well, they're not accountable, that's always my first view is like, what are you doing or not doing? Because we got to fix that first. And then this idea that we make an agreement around when's the right time to ask for help, because I think we got to have that. And then what are the triggers that are going to say to me that it's time for me to mix in?
Yeah.
Right? Like and I think we can play with that. Different strokes for different folks, if you will. Different levels of that depending on what's happening or not happening or who it is or how big the project or the client, like those levels can vary, maybe is what I'm trying to say. But
Yeah.
like, if you aren't actively talking about that like big kids, to use your quote, then no one knows and everyone feels uncomfortable, and that's where trust gets eroded. Is that fair that I said it that way?
Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. And the way I've done it with my direct reports, anyways, is we've literally built this is what you come to me for, and this is what you don't come to me for.
Yeah,
It sounds like so black and white, and sure, there's always gray area in
sure there
there.
is. Yeah.
But it's like if this, especially, my operations manager, it's like if this happens, I need to know about it within the hour. If
Yeah.
this happens, I expect you'll handle it and you'll let me know at our next one-to-one the outcome of it.
Yeah.
So we've made it kind of very clear on what's your lane, what's my lane, and when do you need to get me involved. And
Yeah.
that's also given me some peace of mind to know, like, okay, if things get real bad, you're going to let me know, and you're going to pull me in
Yeah.
instead of trying to handle it and it exploding into this big thing.
Yeah. Yeah, because nobody wants that. We
No,
don't want that for them. We don't
no,
want that for our business. And the truth is they don't want that either because they're working really hard to do it right for us. Like you said at the very beginning, people want to do a good job.
of course.
And so they don't want it to blow up. I know I was working with he was a sales manager, and we were talking about, you got to give people the right level so they can learn and grow. Now, when you've got someone starting off, you give them the $5,000 deal, not the $50,000 deal. Like, make sure that you are being very strategic and situational in your approach to how you're setting these boundaries, these standards, these check-ins,
True.
right? So that they make sense for the individual. I mean, clearly your operations manager, incredibly proficient, very experienced. She's got this, right? If you have someone who is new or more junior or has moved into a different role, so there's some learning to be done. Yes, of course you're going to set the boundaries a little tighter, right?
That's normal. Yep, that's normal.
Normal, normal. But I think, the bottom line that is in my head is that when you do this and you're constantly working on it, this is where the trust comes from. Everybody feels like they can trust this system and approach.
Agreed. I think the other really big thing around it, though, that is very important to point out is this is also where your business growth comes from.
Yeah, thank you for saying that.
At the end of the day, and I know you and I had this when we first met, we had this conversation about the link between growing or scaling your company and leadership.
Yes.
And I used to be from that school of thought that leadership skills, I'm air quoting, are frou-frou and they're woo-woo, and it's who needs coaching, and oh, did I get my ass handed to me. And I learned that the only way you scale a company is to grow your own leadership skills. And then when you get your MBA or your master's degree in leadership is when you're now teaching others how to lead others. And you'll never grow a company if you can't learn those skills.
Amazing. Yes, for all the kids in the back that didn't hear that, your business is only going to grow if you are ready to grow and if you are ready to expand your leadership capability, because you cannot have a high performing team and a high performing business if you are not prepared to be a high performing leader. It is that simple.
Yep.
Yeah. So buckle up is the is the yeah, no, but I thank you for saying that. I mean, I would stand on top of tall mountains and preach that if I could climb.
Well, and I think the other really important thing to acknowledge is that you never stop growing in that area. You
Nope.
always will have something new to learn. Every day at work, I come to work and go, well, that's a new one I wasn't expecting.
Oh, I don't know who said it, but like every day's a school day,
Yeah.
right? Every day's a school day when you're an entrepreneur, especially when your business is growing. When you're in a space where your business is really scaling quite rapidly, and the learning curve then is straight up, right? It is constant and it's daunting. You can do it. You need help. Short pitch, get a coach, find one who can help you be a better you. Call me if you need me. But yeah, like for real, thank you for saying that from someone again who's grown a very successful business. Lisa's very well respected in our business network here in Calgary, where we are from and beyond, right? You just told us she was in the US. But I think that is a lesson that business owners they learn either sooner because they're smarter, or they learn later. As you said, they can get their ass handed to them. And those are hard lessons sometimes.
Yeah, they can be, but what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Can always bounce back. There are
That's right.
there are ways to do it easier. Having the right coach will help you do it, expedite the process, and prevent you from having all of the bruising, right?
True.
Yeah,
It's true.
yeah, yeah. So invest in a great coach. Lisa, thank you. I'm so grateful for your time. This has been just a marvelous conversation today. And I'm very grateful that you would come on the show and just really share so open-heartedly. Thank you.
Well, thanks for having me. This was really fun, Lindsay.
I really appreciated your time. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Female Founder Unplugged podcast. I hope you enjoyed listening as much as I did hosting this conversation. I feel so lucky that I get to connect with such amazing female entrepreneurs. And if you enjoyed today's session, would you do me a big favor? Would you hit subscribe and give this episode a 5-star review? I'd also love it if you would share with your friends. We've got a goal here at the Female Founder Unplugged podcast to impact 1,000 female founders. And with your help, we can really amplify the message. Thanks again for being a part of the show. And don't forget to connect with me at highvoltageleadership.ca. We'll see you next week.